So we shouldn't expect America's private sector innovators to protect themselves if we won't tell them where the attacks are coming from. And if we don't share this information or allow them to share information with us,
Gentleman's time has expired.
How do we expect to secure this sensitive information? 30 more seconds, Mr. Chairman, please.
You have 30 more additional seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 additional seconds.
So we essentially have three choices. We can pass this bill, very narrowly focused, allowing our intelligence community to work with private industry, or we can fund a massive new government program, which I think we've proven that those massive new government programs seldom work and are often costly. Or would the opponents of this bill simply rather do nothing and allow our country to continue to be attacked every day? We need to pass this bill to enable cyber threat sharing and provide clear authority for the private sector to defend its networks. And, Madam Speaker, I want to close by saying that we should congratulate Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Ruppersberger for the work that they've done to protect this country.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Yes. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my distinguished colleague from the state of Oklahoma, Mr. Dan Bourne, who is also a member of the Intelligence Committee. He's worked very closely with me and the chairman to bring this bill to the floor today, and we thank him for that.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 3 minutes.
Hey, Madam Chair, I rise today in support of the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. I'm proud to have been a part of this bipartisan effort led by Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Ruppersberger to bring this bill to the floor today. There is one fact on which everyone can agree. Our country must strengthen its cybersecurity capabilities. To achieve this, we need the cooperation of industry, government, and our citizens. And we need to protect the unique interests of each of these groups. Some may be asking the question, how does this bill protect American industry? It gives private companies the ability to receive classified information from the government to protect their networks. The bill also gives them flexibility to share information with the government without compromising their business equities or harming their customers. This information sharing partnership will enhance government efforts to analyze and understand malicious codes and other cyber threats. I think companies that have publicly supported this legislation have gotten a bad rap in the press. And I think we all need to remember, these American companies are not the enemy. They employ thousands of Americans and provide essential cyber services to millions of people. They are profit-making entities that want to satisfy their customers and grow their businesses. These American companies have absolutely no motivation to send private customer information to the government or anyone else. In fact, they have every reason to protect it. Under this legislation, American companies will enhance their capability to protect the private information of their customers by receiving classified assistance from the government. Moreover, they will help their customers and the country by voluntarily informing the government of malware and other malicious conduct and threats that emerge from their networks. But that is not the only way that this bill protects our citizens' privacy. It restricts the government's use and retention of any personal information that companies may choose to share. In addition, it directs the Intelligence Community Inspector General to monitor and report any abuse of users' privacy. And finally, we must also remember that the government is not the enemy. The intelligence community does not want to squander this opportunity to improve our nation's cybersecurity by abusing the civil liberties or privacy of American citizens. To this end, the bill specifies that the government can only use the information it receives from the private sector for purposes directly related to addressing cyber threats, national security, and threats to life and limb. In closing, this legislation strikes the appropriate balance between the interests of the private sector, industry, the federal government, and private citizens. It will help our country avoid potential cyber catastrophe. 30 additional seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for
It will help our country avoid potential cyber catastrophe that could threaten our national security and endanger our economic prosperity. With that, I urge my fellow members to join me and support this important bill. Again, I want to say specifically to our ranking member and our chairman, thank you for putting the country's interest ahead of partisan gain. We're working together in this committee, both Democrats and Republicans, to do what's best interest of our intelligence community and the United States of America. I yield back.
Madam Chairman, may I ask how much time we have?
The gentleman from Maryland has 8 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Michigan has 10.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan.
Madam Chair, I would yield 1 minute and 30 seconds to the gentleman from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute and 50 seconds.
I thank the chairman. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. My friends, that is the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, one of the original 10 Bill of Rights, protecting in writing the privacy of the United States citizenry. I want to give Mr. Rogers and Mr. Ruppersberger an A for effort in terms of identifying the problem, but I have to give them an F for problem solution. The word privacy in the underlying bill is mentioned one time, and that in passing. There are no explicit protections against privacy. In fact, there is an explicit exemption of liability to all people who engage in the collection, dissemination, transfer, and sharing of information. And the cause of action, if you feel your privacy has been violated, is to go to district court and prove there was willful and knowingly sharing of your information without your permission. And if you prevail in federal district court, you get $1,000 or whatever it costs you. My friends, we have a real problem. I take the chairman at his word. He's a former FBI agent, that he wants to solve this cyber threat. I know he means it, but until we protect the privacy rights of our citizens, the solution is worse than the problem that they're trying to solve. Please vote no on this bill.
Expired. Gentleman from Maryland.
Yep. Madam Speaker, I have no more speakers. I'd like to yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
First thing, there were some comments that I would like to respond to. First thing, this bill does not allow the wholesale violation of privacy rights. This bill is extremely important to our national security, but also important to our citizens of this great country, are our privacy rights and civil liberties. And we are, the chairman and I have taken this very seriously, as have the members of our caucus. We know this is not a perfect bill. There will probably be additional changes. We will have more debate later on this afternoon. Now, some of the things I want to address. During the drafting of this legislation, we put forward a wide range of privacy protections. First, and we worked for the last year with the White House, privacy groups, business groups, to come to a coalition to make sure that we get this bill right. First, the bill severely limits what kind of information can be shared with the government. Only information directly pertaining to the threat can be shared, which is mostly formulas, X's and O's, the virus code. It's almost something that the companies deal with now in dealing with spam. Second, the bill encourages companies to voluntarily strip out personal information that may be associated with these O's and 1s, and occasionally that does occur, and we have to deal with that, and we will continue to deal with that issue. There also are strong use limitations on the data. This information must be used for cybersecurity purposes or the protection of national security. The information cannot be used for regulatory purposes. For example, if there's evidence of tax evasion, that information cannot be used in a criminal proceeding, only national security, only in the areas of life and limb, or for anything involving juvenile crimes. The bill prohibits the government from requiring the companies to give information to the government in exchange for receiving the cyber threat intelligence. That means that when we pass the information of the attacks, it's called the secret sauce, to the providers, it's only voluntarily. The government can't put any restrictions on that whatsoever, and that really means that this is not surveillance at all. The bill does not allow the government to order you to turn over private email or other personal information. This is not, again, surveillance. The bill does not allow the government to monitor private networks, read private emails, censor or shut down any website. This is not SOPA. In an effort to improve the bill even more, the Intelligence Committee, thank you to the leadership of Chairman Rogers, has been working with privacy groups, the White House, and other interested parties to address these concerns with the legislation. We, on our side of the aisle, take, again, this issue of privacy very seriously. The committee has maintained an open-door policy and made more changes to the bill to make it even more better, as we have gone on up until today. The legislation grants no new authority to the Department of Defense, the National Security, or the intelligence community to require to direct any public or private cyber security effort. If the government violates any of these restrictions placed on it by the legislation, the government can be sued for damages, costs, and attorney's fees. Now, I think it's extremely important. We on the Intelligence Committee deal with these issues every day. This is a very sophisticated, it's an area that we deal with that most people don't know. And so we're attempting, and we have for the last year, to educate as many of our members as we can. But it's important to know that national security is clear, our effort and what we're attempting to do, but also maintain the privacy, the constitutional rights of our citizens. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Michigan.
Madam Chair, I would yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think we can say often enough how important it is that the chairman and ranking member have worked together not only on the substance of this bill, but in the process of getting us here. They have truly put the country's interests first, and I think all members should commend them for that. This was a good bill when it was reported out of committee, 17-1. I think it will be a better bill once the amendments are considered and adopted. And for any member who has concerns about privacy or misuse of information, I think they should look at the amendments that are going to be adopted, and any reasonable concern, any semi-reasonable concern about privacy will be addressed with the limitations that those amendments add. Madam Chair, this bill does not solve all the problems in cybersecurity. All 4 bills that we're considering today and tomorrow don't solve all the problems we have in cybersecurity. But it makes no sense to me, as some seem to have argued, that we should not solve this problem of information sharing because we're not solving all the problems that somebody can see out there. And this problem of information sharing has been central to cybersecurity concerns for some time. I happened across a report from December 2004 that was issued by a subcommittee I chaired of the Select Committee on Homeland Security, along with the gentlelady from California, Ms. Lofgren, where we wrote, whether it is vulnerability assessments, threat warnings, best practices, or emergency response, information sharing with the private sector is critical to securing the United States from cyber attack. That was 8 years ago. Why has it not occurred? Because all the legal obstacles, all the fear of being sued has prevented it from occurring. And that's what this bill does. It clears away the legal underbrush that has prevented the kind of information sharing that people have been talking about for a decade. This is a good, important step. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it puts more information at the disposal of critical infrastructure so that they can be protected. It should be adopted.
Gentleman from Maryland.
Madam, I have a speaker on the way. Mr. Rogers, do you have any more speakers?
I do.
Yeah. I reserve my time.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves his time. Gentleman from Michigan.
Madam Chair, I would yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from the great state of Oregon.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
And I thank the chairman and the ranking member for their bipartisan and thoughtful approach to this incredibly important issue facing our country. I support your legislation. I commend you both for identifying a glaring hole in our cyber defenses, better information sharing between the private sector and the government. Such sharing is a force multiplier. It combines the technological strength of our network providers with the ongoing efforts of our agencies to combat growing cyber threats. From the get-go, the bill has protected privacy and civil liberties and ensured that any information sharing is voluntary. I understand Chairman Rogers has also gone the extra mile to reach out to the privacy community and will be offering and supporting amendments to address any lingering concerns that may remain from misunderstandings over the language. Breaking down the barriers to information sharing is a linchpin to better cybersecurity, and this legislation will be a tremendous step forward in securing cyberspace for our citizens. But don't take my word for it. That's what cybersecurity firms and researchers, internet service providers, and government officials told the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, which I chair, in the 3 separate hearings that we held. That's what a bipartisan working group I convened concluded when it interviewed a broad spectrum of stakeholders in the cybersecurity debate. By contrast, no matter how well-intentioned, cybersecurity regulations would likely just expand government, reduce flexibility, impose costs, misallocate capital, create more red tape, and not more security. According to one government witness, regulating cybersecurity practices would, quote, stifle innovation and harm the industry's ability to protect consumers from cyber threats. Indeed, voluntary efforts, not government regulation, are already improving cybersecurity for communications networks that cover 80% of Americans. When Congress is looking at a complex issue like cybersecurity, we need to heed the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. So I want to thank my colleagues for making this process especially open and transparent. Representative Rogers has graciously reached out to members of the Energy and Commerce Committee to understand our concerns about protecting privacy and civil liberties and preventing regulatory overreach. And Representative Thornberry's work in organizing the House Republican Cybersecurity Task Force,
30 seconds.
which included Representatives Terry and Latta, members of my subcommittee. Bottom line is, we're going to protect America from the greatest threat to America and to Americans with this legislation. We need to make sure that our private sector is nimble and flexible and innovative, and tying its hands with prescriptive regulation we heard over and over again in our subcommittee hearings would do the opposite of that and would result in the bad guys getting an edge on the good guys. I support this bipartisan legislation. I urge its passage. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my distinguished colleague from the state of Georgia, Mr. John Lewis, one of the most respected members of our Congress.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank my friend, the gentleman from Maryland, for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise to oppose H.R. 3523. It is a step back. Those of us who protested in the 50s and the 60s, who were called communists, who had our telephone calls recorded, we have a long memory. We remember our nation's dark past. Martin Luther King Jr.'s telephone was wiretapped. His hotel room was wiretapped. His home was wiretapped. Our office was wiretapped. Our meetings were wiretapped. And it was not just people spying on civil rights activists, but people protesting against the war in Vietnam. We didn't have a Facebook, a Twitter, or email. These new tools must be protected. Today we have a mission, a mandate, and a moral obligation to protect future generations of activists and protesters. So I said to my colleague, stand with us today. Stand up and stand on the right side of history. Oppose H.R. 3523. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, I yield myself 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Lots of misinformation about this bill today. I respect the gentleman from Georgia greatly for his efforts. I heard the gentleman from Texas talk about searches and seizures, and this is the good news. There are none of those things in this bill. None. You know, if I knew that your house was to be robbed, I would expect that if the police knew that they'd pick up the phone and call you and say, you are going to be robbed. Take precaution. We'll be there shortly. This bill just says if we have this nasty source code, these zeros and ones, I want to give it to you so you can protect your systems. That's it. No monitoring, no content, no surveillance, nothing. That's not what this bill is about. I understand the passion about it. That's why we've taken a year to forge this bipartisan effort to get where we believe privacy is protected. It is paramount that we do that. That our civil liberties are protected. It is paramount that we do that. But we at least take down the hurdle to share nasty source code or software that's flying through the internet, that's developed and it's very sophisticated by the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians and other groups and non-nation state actors that are going to steal your personal information. That's all this is. It's sharing bad source code so you can put it on your system so you don't get infected. End of story. I wish people would read the bill, all of it, every word of it. I think you'll find the carefully crafted language to make sure that our rights are protected, that the Fourth Amendment is protected, and by the way, just like the Army, the Navy, the Marines, your FBI is protecting you. That's what this bill allows it to do. Simply that. So as I said, I respect greatly the gentleman from Georgia. There's a lot of atrocities I think he lived through in his life that no one should have to live through. We took those things into consideration when we wrote this bill, and that's why we've got so much support and so much technical company support, companies like Facebook and Microsoft and all of those groups. So I hope people read the bill and support the bill, and I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves.
You got to close?
Well, yeah. Well, you're going to close? I close. Well,
Gentleman from Maryland
right,
recognized.
Okay. Madam Speaker, first,
gentleman has 3 minutes remaining.
I have 3 minutes. First, I just again want to say that the purpose of this bill, as the chairman just said, is very basic and simple. We want to protect our citizens from attacks. We're being attacked as we speak right now. Just last year, it's estimated we have lost $300 billion worth of trade secrets. We even know that one country is attacking our fertilizer country to find out how we make it better than they do. This is putting our business at jeopardy, our jobs at jeopardy, and we know we sure need jobs. More importantly, those of us who work in this field know how serious these threats are. The head of our FBI, whose responsibility it is to provide our domestic national security, has said that one of the most serious threats, if not a bigger threat than terrorism, it would be a catastrophic cyber attack. And we've already talked about it today, what that would be. We have our Secretary Napolitano has said the same thing, the Director of Homeland Security, one of the most serious issues our countries deal with. And yet, it's unfortunate, but most of our citizens aren't aware of how serious this threat is. So we attempted to allow our intelligence community, who's one of the best in the world, when they have the ability to see these threats coming in from other countries or terrorist groups, and to be able to right now give this information over to the private sector to protect us, you, me, our businesses. That's what this bill does, nothing more. And what we're attempting to do is to move the bill, get the bill to the Senate. We can always do better in the area of privacy and civil liberties, and we're going to continue to do that. We can always do better in the area of Homeland Security and go further to protect those institutions and our grid systems and that type of thing. But this is the start, because the one thing that now is stopping our country and stopping us from protecting our citizens is this Congress. This Congress needs to pass this bill now. We need to move forward. We need to get it to the Senate. We need to start working with the Senate, and then hopefully we'll deal and work very closely with the White House and find a bill so that we can protect our citizens, but that also protect our civil liberties and privacy. And I also understand where Mr. Lewis, we all respect him and what he's gone through. And as a former prosecutor and lawyer who worked on many search and seizure warrants and that type thing, I can tell you this, there's no violation in this bill at all. That is not what this bill is about. And if it were, I wouldn't be in favor of this bill. So I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the
And
balance.
I thank you, Mr. Rogers, for your cooperation and working with us in this bipartisan manner. It's a very serious issue.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized. Gentleman has 2.5 minutes remaining.
I, too, want to thank the ranking member and both staffs from both committees who have been tireless in this effort to get it right, to find that right place where we could all feel comfortable. The amendments that you're going to see that are following here is months of negotiation and work with many organizations, privacy groups, We have worked language with the Center for Democracy and Technology, and they just the other day said they applauded our progress on where we're going with privacy and civil liberties. So we have included a lot of folks. It's been a long road. It has been the most open and transparent bill that I think I've ever worked on here. We kept it open to the very end to make sure that we could find the language that clarified our intent to protect privacy, protect civil liberties, and just be able to share dangerous information with victims. That's all this bill is. The whopping 13 pages it is does only that. So I appreciate the comments today. I look forward to the amendment debate. And again, Mr. Ruppersberger, it's been a joy to work with you on this particular issue. And as an old Army officer once told me, once you find a problem, you are morally obligated to do something about it. We said about it a year ago to make America safe and to protect your networks at home from people stealing it, breaking it, and doing something worse. So, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I would yield back my time and look forward to the debate on the amendments.
All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. In lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence printed in the bill, it shall be in order to consider as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of the Rules Committee print 112-20. That amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. No amendment to that amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order except those printed in House Report 112-454. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall be subject to a demand for division of the question. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 1, printed in House Report 112-454. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition? The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 1, printed in House Report Number 112-454, offered by Mr. Langevin of Rhode Island.
Pursuant to House Resolution 631, the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langevin, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Rhode Island.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. The bill, Madam Chair, that we are considering today creates a voluntary information sharing network which could provide owners and operators of critical infrastructure with valuable threat information that would help them to secure their networks from cyber attacks. Unfortunately, the legislation specifies it applies only to, and I quote, private sector entities and utilities. And while utilities is defined extremely broadly in the legislation as any entity that provides essential services, including telecommunications and transportation providers, there remains the possibility that the definition may exclude pieces of our critical infrastructure that have significant cyber vulnerabilities. My amendment, which I am offering with my good friend Mr. Lungren from California, strikes the uses of the word utilities and replaces it in each instance with the phrase critical infrastructure owners and operators. This is a common-sense way to avoid potential confusion and eliminate any possibility that critical entities could be denied the opportunity to opt into this voluntary information sharing framework and thereby share and receive the valuable classified threat information that will be available under CISPA. This amendment will not significantly expand the scope of the legislation, but instead will help prevent interpretations of language that could be contrary to the committee's intent, which I believe is the same as mine. Now, while I recognize that any regulation of critical infrastructure would be outside the Intelligence Committee's jurisdiction, I nonetheless want to take this opportunity to voice my strong conviction that our efforts must not stop with the legislation that we're considering this week. Just as the airline industry must follow federal aviation safety standards, companies that own and operate the infrastructure on which the public most relies should be accountable for protecting their consumers when confronted with a significant risk. I, along with many members of both sides of the aisle and experts within and outside of government, have come to the same basic conclusion. The status quo of voluntary action will not result in strong cyber protections for our most valuable and vulnerable industries. The Homeland Security Committee emphasized last week that our critical infrastructure control systems, which are mainly in private hands, must come up to a certain baseline level of cybersecurity standards. With the increased public awareness helping to build momentum for legislative action, we have a real chance to address these threats. And I hope that we will not look back on this moment years from now regretting a missed opportunity after the damage has been done. While the amendment that we're offering today will not by itself provide the protections that Mr. Lungren and I ultimately believe are necessary for our critical infrastructure, it is a useful first step, and I'm thankful to Mr. Lungren for joining me in this effort. And with that, Madam Chair, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. For what purposes, gentleman from Michigan rise?
I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I want to first compliment Mr. Langevin for working with us on the cybersecurity bill. He has been an instrumental force in pushing this cybersecurity issue to the front and getting the language that we have that finds that right balance. My concern with this, and I think why I thought the President's, at least his advisors who are recommending to the President that he veto the bill were misguided, is because now we have done something in this bill fairly unique. It's all voluntary, and we have separated the government and the private sector. Government's not going to be involved in private sector networks, and they're not going to be involved in the government networks. Perfect. That's exactly the balance we found. With this, it crosses both of those, and it gets us to a place that I think we need to have a lot more discussion on. And you can see by the level of debate just on this issue how people are really nervous about the federal government getting into their business. This, I'm afraid, opens it up to that. The term, here's the good news, we believe this is already covered in the bill as far as the sharing component, and you replace the word utility with something that isn't defined. Critical infrastructure owners and operators. We're not sure what that is. In some cases, you could extrapolate that to be even the local police who argue they're part of the national security infrastructure. Does that mean local police are going to get very sensitive foreign cyber intelligence information, and why would they have it? And we don't know the answers to those questions, and that's why we were having such a hard time with this amendment. I would argue that there does need to be a Homeland Security bill. And it really shouldn't be done in the Intelligence Committee. It should be done in the Homeland Security Committee. So I would love to work with Mr. Langevin as the process works its way through the Homeland Security Committee and believe that that should be fully debated. Remember, when you start getting regulation into the private sector, including private networks, that, I argue, is troublesome and very worrisome to me and something I would have a hard time supporting. So I look forward to working with the gentleman. I'll have to oppose this amendment, but I want to thank you for all your work on the cyber issue and clearly this cyber information sharing bill. And I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Rhode Island.
I thank the Chairman of the Intelligence Committee for his thoughts. I respectfully disagree. The word utilities is important, but I believe critical infrastructure and abundance of caution is a better term than the term utilities. With that, I'd like to yield how much time do I have, Madam Chair?
Gentleman has 2 minutes remaining.
I yield a minute and a half to the distinguished chairman of the subcommittee on
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I'm very happy to join him in offering this amendment. I think the amendment is quite simple. As written, the bill allows for information to be shared with the private sector and utilities, but there are those that do not fall within that I think we would all agree should be able to have this relationship. Our bill, our amendment, would have the simple effect of including those elements such as airport authorities, mass transit authorities, or municipal hospitals, which are neither private sector nor utilities, to be able to participate in this voluntary information sharing regime. I find it odd to find out that the committee is worried about the definition critical infrastructure. That has been defined in the U.S. Code for over a decade. It is in the language in 42 U.S.C. 5195C, the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act of 2001, which defines critical infrastructure as systems or assets, whether physical or virtual, so vital to the United States that the incapacity or destruction of such systems and assets would have a debilitating impact on security, national economic security, national public safety, health or safety, or a combination of these. That has been the definition that we have supported. That's been the definition we've worked on. Your committee, our committee, all committees have. I find this a very simple amendment that tries to reach what I think we all are trying to reach. It does not grant any more authority to the federal government. It allows for the sharing of information to vital entities, as the gentleman has suggested, that we would all agree ought to be there. I would hope that pride of authorship is not the problem here. We're trying to do something that we think makes common sense. And if folks have trouble with the definition of critical infrastructure, you would have thought it would have been raised in the last decade. So I would hope that we could have support for this
another 15 seconds.
I would hope that we could have support for this bipartisan amendment brought forward by the gentleman who serves on the Intelligence Committee. I serve on the Homeland Security Committee. I'm chairman of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity. Seems to me to make eminent sense. I do not understand why there is some opposition to this amendment. I thank the gentleman.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan.
How much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman has 3 minutes remaining.
Yeah. I just to remind the gentleman that the definition does not go back anywhere in this bill to that. It leaves it open. And when you start, again, crossing that valley between the government and the private sector, it causes serious issues. As you can see, the people who are very concerned that the government's going to get in to regulating anything on the Internet. I would say this is no pride of authorship. I don't know if Mr. Ruppersberger and I could have any more authors participate in our bill than we have. The problem here is very real and very substantive. And that's why I think both the gentlemen who have as much passion and care and commitment to this issue as I've seen need to work that issue on the Homeland Security Committee so you can do it in a way that won't rise to the level of the objections that we have seen when just the suggestion of regulating outside of the purview of national security comes into discussion. And that's why I would hope the gentleman would exercise extreme caution when taking that walk. It is perilous for the government to get into regulating the Internet, and I oppose that completely. And so that's why we have these problems, I think, arise from it. I think if these are issues that they can get over, but this should have substantive debate. Remember, this very narrow bill took 1 year. 1 year of work and negotiation and discussions to get it where we are today. So I would encourage that maybe more thought ought to be put in it, and I would look forward to working with both gentlemen as they introduce and work their bills through the Homeland Security Committee, as I think would be appropriate. And I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Rhode Island.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I thank the Chairman of the Intelligence Committee for his thoughts. I want to be very clear that this term, substituting the word critical infrastructure for utilities, does not mean regulating critical infrastructure. It just allows for the broadest possible definition of information sharing among those entities that are deemed to be critical infrastructure. With that, I thank Chairman Lungren for his support of this bipartisan amendment, and with that, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back.
Madam Chair, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Rhode Island. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
I ask the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Rhode Island will be postponed. The chair understands that amendment number 2 will not be offered. It is now in order to consider amendment number 3, printed in House Report 112-454. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in House Report number 112-454, offered by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 631, the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Pompeo, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kansas.
Great. Madam Chairman, thank you. I want to thank Chairman Rogers and Chairman Ruppersberger for their hard work on this. important piece of legislation. I am among those folks who, when first learned of this legislation, had some concern to make sure that it was balanced and it did the right things. Also as a former Army officer, I recognize the deep national security implications of the cyber threat, but wanted to make sure that we also did everything that was necessary to protect everyone's privacy rights. This is a simple amendment. It makes clear that the liability protection in the bill with respect to the use of such systems only extends to the identification and acquisition of cyber threat information and no further. This is an unprecedented threat from countries like China and Russia. These are hostile nations, and they're committed resources, unprecedented resources, to attack U.S. networks each and every minute of every day. And while this new threat is being developed by our foreign enemies, organized criminals and foreign hackers also just as easily deploy malicious cyber attacks to disrupt stock markets, transportation networks, businesses, governments, and even our military operations. A devastating cyber attack could easily be unleashed from remote comfort of enemies' computers thousands of miles away from our nation. We must take this threat very, very seriously. Part of the challenge in cyberspace is that a line of computer code could be just as deadly as a traditional military weapon. We've already seen these attacks used as an instrument of war. In 2008, Georgia suffered a significant cyber attack prior to the invasion by Russia. This attack crippled Georgia's banking system and disrupted the nation's cell phone services, helping to clear the battlefield for the invading Russians. Perhaps the most significant dangerous activity in cyberspace even goes unnoticed. Cyber spies lay in wait for years in order to eventually steal precious military and economic secrets. Each of these examples further illustrates the need for legislation. Unfortunately, some civil liberties and privacy advocates claim that liability protection in this bill with respect to the use of cybersecurity systems could lead to broader activities than authorized. This legislation doesn't do that, but my amendment clarifies still further. This amendment simply provides clarifying language to the original language of the bill, and thus enjoys support of bipartisan co-sponsors of the legislation, as well as the outside groups that raise these concerns. I urge approval of this amendment, and with that, I reserve the balance of my time, Madam Chair.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Does any member seek time in opposition?
No.
I yield as much time as he may consume to the Chairman of the Intelligence Committee.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I want to thank Mr. Pompeo for working with this. This was an amendment negotiated with Mr. Ruppersberger, myself, and Mr. Pompeo to clearly define the intention of the bill, and I think it offers protections, and I think we should all strongly support Mr. Pompeo's amendment, and I would yield back.
And I support the bill, the amendment.
I'm going to yield back the remainder of the time.
Madam Chair, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 4, printed in House Report 112-454. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk, Madam Chair.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 4, printed in House Report Number 112-454, offered by Mr. Rogers of Michigan.
Pursuant to House Resolution 631, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Rogers, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm good. As much time as I might consume, I strongly encourage the support of this amendment. It's a simple amendment. We negotiated just a clarifying language again on FOIA, and with that, I'm going to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Issa from California.
Gentleman from
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Hopefully there will be time left over also for Mr. Chaffetz, who's worked hard on this amendment. I want to thank the chairman for working with our committee on this amendment that clarifies in the Cybersecurity Sharing and Protection Act that FOIA, the Freedom of Information Access Act, is in fact clearly in effect for the vast majority of this information. We understand that companies, and I'll just take an example, companies such as electric utility companies may share their very vulnerabilities as part of a process to reduce or eliminate these vulnerabilities. We certainly understand that that's not FOIA-able. National security is not FOIA-able. However, we, in this amendment, ensure that everything is at least possibly FOIA-able whenever it would be appropriate, and then the only question is, does it stand for one of the exclusions? So by making it narrow, we tell the American people that the Freedom of Information Act is in effect on cybersecurity and will not be unreasonably withheld. I think this is critical at a time in which greater transparency is the promise, and there is a great deal of concern about cybersecurity somehow being something that would take away America's freedoms. Just the opposite is true. Our freedom of the Internet, our freedom to have an effective and efficient system on which to build our infrastructure, both for electricity and other utilities, but also for our everyday life, essentially requires the kind of cooperation that we anticipate. And with that, I yield back.
A gentleman from Michigan.
I reserve the balance of my time.
He reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from
Madam Chair, I claim time in opposition to the amendment. However, I do not oppose the amendment.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I agree with Mr. Issa's comments, and I know our chairman. This is a joint amendment with Mr. Rogers and I. The amendment would make it clear that while FOIA exemption protects information obtained under the bill, regulatory information required by other authorities remains subject to FOIA requests. The chairman and I agree the law should not create a broad change to the type of information that is available under the Freedom of Information. We have a responsibility to protect classified information from disclosure, but we also understand the need to keep information open to the public. The amendment makes clear that information available under other authorities remains subject to FOIA, and I urge all members to support this bipartisan amendment.
Give the remainder of your time to Mr. Chafin.
I yield the remainder.
Gentleman
reserve
yields
the balance of
time
my
to the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you. I appreciate the bipartisan nature in which this is moving forward. I appreciate specifically Chairman Rogers, Chairman Issa, and the ranking member. I stand in support of this amendment. I think FOIA is a very important principle we have in this, and this just strengthens that. I would also say, Madam Chair, that I was opposed to SOPA. I was adamantly opposed to this. But this bill, in particular, is desperately needed in this country. Cybersecurity is a very real threat, and this bill is something that is needed in this country. I think it is strong in its Fourth Amendment protections. I think it's appropriate for this nation to do this. We need to make sure that we're smart on how we advance. There have been some much-needed amendments that were adopted. But again, the bill, as we see it moving forward, I think will strengthen cybersecurity in this country, and I'm proud of the fact that Chairman Rogers is bringing this bill to the floor. Support and urge the support of this amendment and the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan yield back his time.
I would yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan yields back. Gentleman from Maryland yields back.
Back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. It is now. Oh no. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment.
Order vote on this amendment.
Pursuant to 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. On order to consider Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report 112-454. For what purpose does the gentleman from purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in House Report number 112-454, offered by Mr. Quayle of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 631, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Quayle, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak in favor of this bipartisan amendment that I am offering along with Congressman Eshoo, Congressman Thompson, and Congressman Brown. H.R. 3523 is designed to increase the sharing of government intelligence on cyber threats with the private sector and allow private sector companies to share threat information on a voluntary basis. The bill is consistent with our founding principles and our Constitution. Indeed, as the nature of the threats facing our nation change, I believe this legislation is vital in protecting our country. Every day, our military intelligence communities work to counter traditional threats like nuclear and biological weapons in order to prevent a catastrophic attack on U.S. soil. But today's security threats are becoming less traditional. Foreign nations have chosen cyberspace as an area of particular vulnerability for America and are targeting critical military and economic cyber infrastructure. Admiral Mike Mullen, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, lists cyber attacks as one of the top threats facing the United States. Secretary of Defense and former CIA Director Leon Panetta warned that the next Pearl Harbor we confront could very well be a cyber attack that cripples our power systems, our grid, our security systems, our financial systems, our governmental systems. This legislation not only protects our national security and intellectual property, it also provides private and public entities to voluntarily work with the government to protect every individual's personal information from nation-state actors like China, Russia, and Iran, who are determined to use cyber attacks to steal from us and weaken us. This bipartisan amendment will further solidify our commitment to protecting the homeland from foreign nation-states wishing to do us harm, while protecting civil liberties. This amendment significantly narrows the bill's current limitation of the federal government's use of cyber threat information that is voluntarily shared by the private sector. Specifically, this amendment strictly limits the federal government's use of voluntary shared cyber threat information to the following 5 purposes: cybersecurity purposes, investigation and prosecution of cybersecurity crimes, protection of individuals from danger of death or serious bodily harm, protection of minors from child pornography, any risk of sexual exploitation, and serious threats to the physical safety of a minor, and finally, protection of our national security of the United States. If the government violates the use limitation, the bill provides for government liability for actual damages, costs, and attorney fees in federal court. These provisions together ensure that information cannot be shared with the government or used under this bill unless there's a direct tie to cybersecurity. Cyber terrorists work fast, so Congress needs to work faster to protect America. Enabling information sharing between the government and private sector is the quickest and easiest way to prevent a cyber attack on our nation. Our amendment assures we can accomplish this goal while also protecting the privacy of all Americans, and I urge my colleagues to support it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. For what purpose, gentleman from Maryland?
How much time do we have?
Is the gentleman claiming time in opposition?
Yes, I claim time in opposition, but I do not oppose the amendment.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. First thing, this amendment, I'm going to yield my time to Mr. Thompson from California. He is on the Intelligence Committee and also a sponsor of this amendment.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the Thompson, Eshoo, Quayle, Brown amendment to this bill. The threat of a devastating cyber attack is real and can't be understated. I believe the federal government and the private companies need to work together to protect our national and economic security. But in doing so, we still have a responsibility to protect the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. I'm concerned that the underlying bill is drafted in a way where consumer information could be shared too broadly and used in ways unrelated to combating cybersecurity threats. The Thompson, Eshoo, Quayle, Brown Amendment will tighten the bill's limitation on the federal government's use of cyber threat information shared under this legislation.
Specifically, our amendment will limit the federal government's use of shared information only for cybersecurity purposes, for the investigation and prosecution of cybersecurity crimes, to protect against the threat of imminent harm, and to protect our country's national security. This bill, even with our amendment, isn't perfect. As this legislation moves forward, I expect the word of the chairman to be honored when he says that our committee will work together to further protect personal information and limits its use. For example, further narrowing terms in this bill, such as, quote, to protect the national security of the United States, end quote, will be necessary, I believe, to fully protect our civil liberties. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona.
I would like to yield 30 seconds to the Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you,
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Quayle. Again, this is an amendment worked out with Mr. Ruppersberger, myself, and Mr. Quayle. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Eshoo is also on the bill. And this is with consultation with all of the privacy groups and civil liberty groups. We wanted to make sure that the intent matched the language, and we think this is a limiting amendment on what it can be used for, which is very narrow. It is very specific, and we think this enhances already good privacy protections in the bill, and I strongly support it and would encourage the House to strongly support the bipartisan amendment.
I continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Yield back.
Gentleman from Maryland yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from Arizona.
I just want to thank the Chairman and the Ranking Member and their staffs for working tirelessly on this bill. It's a good bill, and this amendment, I believe, strengthens it, and I urge my colleagues to support it, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. Pursuant to Clause of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 7, printed in House Report 112-454. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 7, printed in House Report Number 112-454, offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan.
Pursuant to House Resolution 631, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Amash, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I am extremely concerned about the privacy implications of the bill. The liability waiver goes too far, and the government can access too much of Americans' private information and use it in too many ways. Our amendment addresses that last concern. Our amendment prohibits CISPA from being used to snoop through sensitive documents that can personally identify Americans. The documents that our amendment makes off-limits to the government are library and book records, information on gun sales, tax returns, educational records, and medical records. We didn't pull this list out of thin air. In fact, the list already exists in federal law as part of the Patriot Act. Under the Patriot Act, the federal government can obtain these documents as part of a foreign intelligence investigation only if senior FBI officials request the documents and a federal judge approves. Many have questioned the wisdom of allowing the government access to sensitive documents, even in those more limited circumstances. If the Patriot Act requires the approval of a federal judge and a senior FBI official, surely we can't allow access to such personal information without any judicial or agency oversight. I don't know why the government would want to snoop through library lists or tax returns to counter a cyber attack, but if the government wants these records, it has existing legal processes to obtain them. Our constituents' privacy demands that we not give the government unfettered and unsupervised access to these documents in the name of cybersecurity. Please support the bipartisan Amash, Labrador, Nadler, Polis Amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan reserves the balance of his time. Does any member seek recognition in opposition to the amendment? No one seeking recognition in opposition. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Justin, we're trying to get a voice vote. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
Madam Chair, I ask for a recorded vote.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. It is agreed to pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 8, printed in House Report 112-454. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk and claim time in support.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 8, printed in House Report Number 112-454, offered by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina.
Pursuant to House Resolution 631, the gentleman from South Carolina and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to rise today and speak in favor of this amendment to the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. The CISPA Act is fundamentally based on the authority granted to Congress in Article 1 of the Constitution and Article 4 of the Constitution, specifically to provide for the common defense and to protect the nation against invasion. In fact, the only affirmative duty that this government is obligated to meet under the terms of our Constitution. This bill protects our nation from foreign cyber threats through the voluntary sharing of cyber threat information. It is important for members to understand this bill allows for only voluntary sharing of information on cybersecurity threats to the United States between the government and the private sector. It includes no mandates to the private sector. It contains no new spending and strictly limits how the government can use the information that is voluntarily provided by the private sector. The amendment that I've offered with Mr. Dix today goes one step further to protect the private information of American citizens. It explicitly prohibits the federal government from retaining or using the information for purposes other than specifically specified or set forth in the legislation. Let's make it clear. The government cannot keep or use the shared information to see if you fail to pay your taxes. The government cannot use this information to read your emails. The government cannot use this information to track your credit card purchases or look at the websites that you've been visiting. Under our amendment, the federal government cannot use or retain information unless it was directly related to a cyber or national security threat. Finally, this bipartisan amendment requires the federal government to notify any private sector entity that shares information with the government if that information is not in fact cyber threat information, so that it doesn't happen again and that the government must delete that information. The privacy of American citizens is simply too important to dismiss. Our amendment narrows the scope of the bill to ensure personal information is protected and that we are focusing on the true threat, advanced foreign state-sponsored cyber attacks against America and its private entities. With that, I would yield such time to the gentleman, to the chairman, as he may consume. Okay. Mr. Dix.
One from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to rise in strong support of this amendment. I appreciate Mr. Mulvaney working with the